The first gunshot shattered the pre-dawn stillness, jolting Rosalie Reed from her fitful sleep in the small homestead she shared with her husband. By sunset, she and 4 other women would be the only survivors of what would later be called the Stillwater Massacre of 1873, huddled together in the smoldering remains of their settlement in the New Mexico Territory. "They're gone," whispered Sarah Jenkins, her trembling hand resting on her swollen belly as she stared at the horizon where the raiders had disappeared. "Everyone's gone." Rosalie surveyed the destruction around them, barely comprehending how quickly their lives had changed. Just yesterday, Stillwater had been a hopeful settlement of 12 families, drawn to the fertile valley 30 miles east of Tucumcari. Now only charred timbers, blood-stained dirt, and 5 terrified pregnant women remained. "What are we going to do?" asked Elizabeth Monroe, the youngest at 19, tears streaming down her ash-smeared face. Her husband of only 6 months lay among the dead. The baby's due in less than 2 months. "We can't stay here," insisted Martha Dawson, a sturdy woman of 28 whose quiet strength had helped deliver 3 of the settlement's children in the past year. "Those raiders might come back." The 5th woman, Catherine Williams, hadn't spoken since watching her husband and 2 young sons fall to the raiders' bullets. Her vacant eyes and protective arms wrapped around her middle told a story of unimaginable loss. "We need shelter, food, and protection," Rosalie stated firmly, pushing aside her own grief to focus on survival. At 24, she had already weathered the loss of her parents to cholera and a brutal winter crossing to reach New Mexico. Now her Daniel was gone too. "We can't make it to Tucumcari in our condition, not without help." As if summoned by her words, a lone rider appeared on the eastern horizon, silhouetted against the rising sun. The women tensed, Martha reaching for a discarded rifle while Sarah herded Elizabeth and Catherine behind the remains of the communal water trough. Rosalie stood her ground, a kitchen knife clutched in her white-knuckled grip. After the horrors they had witnessed, she wouldn't hesitate to use it. The rider approached slowly, hands raised in a gesture of peace. As he drew closer, Rosalie could make out a weathered face beneath the shadow of his wide-brimmed hat. He was tall and lean, with shoulders squared by years of hard work rather than military bearing. Not one of the raiders, then. "Hello, the camp," he called, stopping his horse at a respectful distance. "Name's Owen Thornton. I mean no harm. Saw the smoke from a ways off." Rosalie didn't lower her knife. "The men who did this left yesterday. You're too late for anything but burying the dead." The man Owen dismounted carefully, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. His eyes, the clear blue of a summer sky, took in the devastation with a grim expression before settling on the women's faces and then their evident pregnancies. "Good Lord," he murmured. "You ladies alone out here?" Martha stepped forward, rifle aimed steadily. "We can manage." A sad smile touched the corners of his mouth. "No doubt you're capable, madam, but if you don't mind my saying, you might need a hand." He gestured to their condition. "My ranch is about 10 miles north of here. Nothing fancy, but it's defensible with clean water and shelter." "Why would you help us?" Rosalie demanded, suspicion lacing her words. "You don't know us." Owen Thornton removed his hat, revealing sun-bleached brown hair streaked with premature gray at the temples. There was something in his eyes, a shadow of old pain that resonated with Rosalie. "Because 5 years ago, raiders hit a settlement where my sister lived. By the time I got there, it was too late." He placed his hat over his heart. "I couldn't help her then. Maybe I can help you now." Rosalie exchanged glances with the others. They had few options. Stay and risk the raiders' return, attempt the journey to Tucumcari, or trust this stranger. "We'll need to bury our dead first," Rosalie said finally, lowering the knife. "They deserve that much." Owen nodded solemnly. "I'll help." Throughout that grim day, Owen worked tirelessly, digging graves in the hard earth while the women gathered what few possessions had survived the attack. He showed a quiet respect for their grief, standing bareheaded as each woman said her goodbyes. When Catherine collapsed beside her family's grave, Unable to form words through her sobs, Owen gently helped her to her feet and led her to the shade of a surviving cottonwood. His kindness seemed to penetrate her shock, and she finally spoke. "Thank you," she whispered, so softly that only Owen heard. By late afternoon, the wagons were loaded with salvaged supplies. Owen had rigged makeshift seats with blankets and hay to cushion the journey for the women. Rosalie watched him check the harnesses one final time, his movements efficient and purposeful. "You've done this before," she observed. "Helped people move quickly." He glanced up, a flicker of something wariness perhaps crossing his features before he nodded. "Army Scout years back. Learned to travel light and fast." As they prepared to leave, Rosalie took one last look at the graves, 11 fresh mounds of earth marking the end of Stillwater. Daniel's grave stood third from the left, marked with the carved wooden cross he'd made for their cabin door. "I'll come back," she promised softly. "When it's safe, I'll bring your child to meet you." The journey to Owen's ranch was slow and painful. Every jolt of the wagon drew winces from the women, their bodies already taxed by pregnancy and trauma. Owen led the way on horseback, doubling back frequently to check on them and scout the path ahead. "Not much farther now," he called as the sun began to set. "Just beyond that rise." Rosalie, riding in the lead wagon with Martha, strained to see their destination. As they crested the hill, a small valley opened before them. A sturdy log house stood flanked by a barn and corral with a creek winding nearby. It wasn't large or grand, but the sight of intact buildings, a safe haven, brought tears to her eyes. "It ain't much," Owen said apologetically as he helped them down from the wagons. "Built it for one, not 6. "It's standing," Martha replied practically. "That's more than we had this morning." Owen showed them inside, where a large main room served as kitchen and living area, with 2 small bedrooms off to the sides. A loft space above would provide additional sleeping room. The furnishings were simple but sturdy: a table with chairs, a cooking stove, bookshelves filled with well-worn volumes, and a rocking chair beside the hearth. "I'll sleep in the barn," Owen said. "You ladies take the house." Despite their exhaustion, the women set to making the space livable, drawing strength from having a purpose. Sarah and Elizabeth took one bedroom, Martha and Catherine the other, while Rosalie claimed a corner of the loft. As night fell, Owen brought in fresh water and lit the lamps, then quietly withdrew to the barn. That night, lying on a borrowed blanket beneath a solid roof, Rosalie finally allowed herself to weep for Daniel, for the future they'd planned, for the child who would never know its father. She cried until no more tears would come, then lay listening to the unfamiliar sounds of this new place: the creak of settling logs, the soft snores of the others, the distant whinny of horses. And for the first time since the attack, she slept without fear. Dawn brought the smell of coffee and bacon. Rosalie descended from the loft to find Owen at the stove, deftly turning strips of meat in a cast-iron skillet. "Figured you all could use a hot meal," he said, not turning around. "Hope I didn't wake you." "You didn't." Rosalie moved to the table, noticing it was already set with mismatched plates and cups. "I didn't take you for a cook." A small smile curved his mouth. "Man living alone learns to feed himself or starve. Coffee's ready if you want some." The other women joined them gradually, drawn by the promise of food. Owen served them with awkward courtesy before filling his own plate and sitting at the far end of the table. "We should discuss arrangements," Rosalie said after they'd eaten. "We can't impose on you indefinitely." Owen set down his fork. "It's no imposition. Place needed a woman's touch anyway." 5 women's touches and soon 5 babies, Martha pointed out. "That's a lot of mouths to feed." "Got 60 acres of decent grazing land, a good well, and plenty of game in the hills," Owen replied. "We won't starve. As for space," he glanced around the small house. "I can add on, been meaning to anyway." The casual way he offered to rebuild his home for strangers left Rosalie speechless. Elizabeth, however, had no such constraint. "Why would you do all this for us?" she asked, her young face troubled. What do you want in return? A flash of hurt crossed Owen's features before his expression settled into careful neutrality. Nothing, miss, just trying to be neighborly. Neighborly is lending sugar, Martha said bluntly. This is something else. Owen stood, gathering his plate and cup. Like I said yesterday, I couldn't help my sister. Maybe helping you makes up for that, at least a little. He deposited his dishes in the wash basin. I'll be outside if you need me. Take your time deciding what you want to do. After he left, the women exchanged glances. I think he's sincere, Sarah ventured. He hasn't given us any reason to distrust him. Yet, Catherine added softly, her first contribution to the conversation. Men can change when they have power over you. Rosalie considered Catherine's words carefully. The traumatized woman wasn't wrong. They were vulnerable, dependent on Owen's goodwill in a way that could turn dangerous. We'll stay alert, Rosalie decided. And we'll contribute our fair share. If we see any sign of trouble, we'll leave. But for now, this is the safest option for us and our babies. The others nodded in agreement. For better or worse, Owen Thornton's ranch was their haven now. The next days established a rhythm of sorts. Owen rose before dawn to tend the livestock, often returning to find breakfast prepared by whichever women had risen early. He worked tirelessly, reinforcing the house's defenses, hunting for fresh meat, and beginning construction on an addition to accommodate them all. The women, despite their advanced pregnancies, insisted on contributing. Martha, whose husband had been Stillwater's blacksmith, proved remarkably knowledgeable about tools and construction. Elizabeth, daughter of a Tennessee farmer, took charge of the vegetable garden Owen had started but neglected. Sarah, formerly a schoolteacher, organized their salvaged belongings and began an inventory of supplies. Catherine, still withdrawn but functioning, revealed a talent for cooking that transformed simple ingredients into satisfying meals. Rosalie found herself becoming the unofficial leader of their unusual household, mediating minor disputes and coordinating their efforts. Her previous experience managing her parents' general store had taught her organizational skills that proved valuable in their situation. A week after their arrival, Rosalie found Owen behind the barn, sawing lumber for the addition. She watched for a moment, noting the efficient way he worked despite the heat of the day. "You should rest," she called, approaching with a dipper of water. "You've been at it since sunrise." Owen straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. "Want to get the frame up before the weather turns." September storms can be fierce in these parts. He accepted the water gratefully, drinking deeply before returning the dipper. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, a brief contact that nonetheless sent an unexpected warmth through Rosalie's hand. She stepped back quickly, confused by her reaction. "The others are worried we're taking advantage of you," she said. "You work all day, sleep in the barn, and we've taken over your house." Owen shrugged, returning to his sawing. "I don't mind, been too quiet around here anyway. Why do you live so isolated? Tucumcari isn't that far." The saw paused mid-stroke. People in town have long memories and loose tongues. Out here, a man can leave his past behind. "What are you leaving behind, Owen Thornton?" Rosalie asked softly. He resumed sawing, the rhythmic sound filling the silence between them for several long moments. Just as Rosalie thought he wouldn't answer, he spoke. "War changes a man, makes him see things, do things." He shook his head. "After the fighting stopped, I couldn't settle anywhere people knew me before, needed to start fresh." "You were Confederate." Rosalie guessed, noting his slight Southern accent, "started that way, ended Union." His jaw tightened. "Some folks call that treason, I call it finally seeing clear." He set down the saw and faced her directly. "If that changes how you feel about staying here, I understand." Rosalie considered him thoughtfully. The war had ended 8 years ago, but its divisions still ran deep in many communities. Her own husband had been too young to fight, sparing them the complication of divided loyalties. "We all have pasts, Owen. What matters is who you are now." She gestured to the half-finished frame. "And right now, You're a man building a home for 5 women and their unborn children. That speaks louder than which uniform you wore." Relief flickered across his features, quickly masked by a return to work. "Best get this beam cut before noon." Rosalie took the hint and left him to his task, but their conversation lingered in her mind. Owen Thornton was a more complicated man than he first appeared, with depths of experience that explained both his capability and his isolation. That evening, as they gathered for supper, Martha announced that she'd found more building materials in a lean-to behind the barn. "There's enough lumber there for interior walls," she said, serving herself from the stew pot, "and some furniture pieces that could be repaired." "Did you plan this addition before we arrived?" Owen shifted in his chair. "Started collecting supplies last spring. Thought I might take on a ranch hand eventually, need somewhere to put him. Or perhaps a wife," Elizabeth teased, her youthful spirits gradually returning. The sudden stillness that fell over Owen was palpable. "No," he said firmly. "That wasn't in my plans." An awkward silence followed, broken only when Catherine unexpectedly spoke up. "My Thomas built our cabin as a surprise," she said, her voice faint but clear. "Carried me across the threshold the day we wed." Her eyes glistened with tears, but she continued. "He would have approved of what you're doing, Mr. Thornton, helping us when we had nowhere to go." Owen nodded, clearly moved by her words. "Thank you, Mrs. Williams." "Catherine," she corrected gently, "if we're to live under the same roof, even temporarily, you should use our given names." "Catherine," he agreed, then looked around the table. "And the rest of you?" The women introduced themselves properly: Martha Dawson, Sarah Jenkins, Elizabeth Monroe, and finally Rosalie Reed. As Owen repeated each name, Rosalie noticed how he lingered slightly on hers, as though testing how it felt on his tongue. The following week brought the first real test of their arrangement when a late summer thunderstorm trapped them indoors for 3 days. The close quarters could have bred tension, but instead fostered a growing ease among them. Owen revealed a talent for storytelling that delighted the women, spinning tales of his travels that carefully omitted the darker aspects of his military service. In turn, the women shared their own histories. Sarah and her husband had come west for his health, hoping the dry air would ease his consumption. Elizabeth and her young husband had been seeking adventure and opportunity. Martha and her blacksmith had followed the promise of new settlements needing skilled tradesmen. Catherine spoke of her sons' bright, mischievous boys of 6 and 4 and the orchard they'd planned to establish at Stillwater. Her voice broke often, but she persisted, as though speaking their names kept them alive in some small way. When it came Rosalie's turn, she found herself unexpectedly reluctant to share. "There's not much to tell," she demurred. "Daniel and I came west after my parents died. He had dreams of building something lasting." "And you?" Owen asked quietly from his place by the fire. "What were your dreams?" The question caught her off guard. No one had asked about her dreams since Daniel's courtship 3 years earlier. "I wanted." She hesitated, then continued more firmly. "I wanted a place that was truly mine, somewhere I belonged that couldn't be taken away like my parents' store after they died." Owen's gaze held hers across the room. "A worthy dream," he said, "and still possible." His simple affirmation touched something deep within her, a hope she'd thought buried in Stillwater's graveyard. Before she could respond, however, Sarah gasped and pressed a hand to her belly. "The baby's kicking something fierce," she explained with a strained smile. "Like it's trying to dance to the thunder." The moment passed as attention shifted to Sarah, but Rosalie felt something had changed between her and Owen. Some understanding reached without words. The storm finally broke on the 4th day, releasing them from confinement. Owen immediately returned to construction, now aided by Martha, who insisted her pregnancy wouldn't prevent her from handling tools. The addition progressed rapidly, with the frame completed and roofing begun by the end of the week. It was during this time that Rosalie noticed Owen watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. Not in a manner that made her uncomfortable, but with a thoughtfulness that suggested he was trying to solve a puzzle. She found herself equally curious about him, observing his interactions with the others, noting how his initial awkwardness around them had evolved into a kind of protective camaraderie. 2 weeks after their arrival, Rosalie encountered Owen at the creek where she'd gone to wash laundry. He was upstream, bathing with his back to her, unaware of her presence. She knew she should announce herself or quietly retreat, but for a moment she remained still, struck by the map of scars across his tanned skin, the puckered circle of a bullet wound on his right shoulder, the long slash across his left side that could only have come from a blade. He turned slightly, reaching for a shirt draped over a nearby bush, and Rosalie gasped involuntarily at the sight of more extensive scarring on his chest. The sound alerted him, and he spun toward her, instinctively dropping lower in the water. "I'm sorry," Rosalie called, mortified. "I didn't mean to intrude." Owen grabbed his shirt and pulled it on, the wet fabric clinging to him as he waded to shore. "Should have been more careful," he muttered. "Usually no one around to worry about." "I'll go," Rosalie offered, turning to leave. "No need," Owen said quickly. "I'm done anyway." He moved past her toward the path back to the house, then paused. "Shiloh," he said without turning, "in case you were wondering, April '62, Field Hospital did their best, but it wasn't much." Rosalie's heart constricted at the matter-of-fact way he referenced what must have been a horrific experience. "I wasn't wondering," she lied gently, "but thank you for telling me." He nodded once and continued up the path, leaving Rosalie to her laundry and the troubling realization that Owen Thornton was becoming more than just their benefactor in her mind. The first birth came earlier than expected. Martha woke the household with a startled cry in the pre-dawn darkness, her water broken and contractions already closed together. "It's too soon," she gasped as Rosalie and Sarah helped her to bed. "Not due for 3 more weeks." "Babies have their own schedules," Sarah soothed, her experience as both teacher and mother of a stillborn child giving her words weight. "And you're strong, Martha, you can do this." Owen appeared in the doorway, hair tousled from sleep, eyes wide with alarm. "Should I ride for the doctor in Tucumcari?" Rosalie shook her head. "No time, and we can manage. Women have been birthing babies without doctors since the beginning." He hovered uncertainly. "What can I do?" "Water," Catherine said firmly, taking charge with surprising authority. "Lots of hot water, and clean linens. Then stay close in case we need you, but out of the way." Owen nodded gratefully at the clear instructions and hurried to comply. For the next 6 hours, he maintained the fire, boiled water, and paced the main room while the women attended Martha. When a new voice, tiny but insistent, finally joined the household, his head snapped up, eyes seeking Rosalie as she emerged from the bedroom. "A girl," she announced, wiping her hands on her apron. "Small but strong lunged, Martha's asking for you." "Me?" Owen looked startled. "Why?" Rosalie smiled tiredly. "Go see." Owen approached the bedroom tentatively. Inside, Martha reclined against pillows, cradling a small bundle. Her face, though exhausted, shone with a fierce joy. "Come meet Hannah," she said, turning the bundle so Owen could see the red, wrinkled face of the newborn. "Hannah Margaret Dawson. She's perfect," Owen whispered, keeping a respectful distance. Martha's expression grew serious. "I want to thank you, Owen, without this place." She glanced down at her daughter. "I don't know if either of us would have survived." Owen shook his head. "You're stronger than you know, Martha Dawson. Perhaps, but a roof and walls make being strong a lot easier." She adjusted the blanket around the baby. "I'd like to ask a favor." "Name it." "Be her godfather. Hannah has no blood family left now, and I'd rest easier knowing someone would look after her if." Martha left the sentence unfinished. Owen's face registered shock, followed by a deep emotion that seemed to surprise even him. "I'd be honored," he said finally, his voice rough. "Though you'll be around to raise her yourself, I'm certain of it." After he left, Rosalie approached the bed. "That was a kind thing to do." Martha smiled wearily. "Kind, but also practical. Man needs to know he's needed, especially one carrying as much alone as he does." She closed her eyes. Besides, he earned it building us this haven when we had nothing. Rosalie couldn't argue with that assessment. In the weeks since their arrival, Owen had transformed his bachelor homestead into a proper settlement. The addition now boasted 3 new rooms, with a larger kitchen under construction. He'd reinforced the barn, dug a root cellar, and begun preparing for winter with a single-mindedness that spoke of deep concern for their welfare. Hannah's arrival accelerated these efforts. Owen now rose before dawn and worked until well after dark, stopping only for meals and to check on Martha and the baby. The tenderness with which he regarded the infant revealed yet another facet of this complex man. One evening, Rosalie found him on the porch, staring at the stars. The nights had grown cooler and she wrapped a shawl around her shoulders as she joined him. "You should rest," she said, echoing her words from weeks before. "You're driving yourself too hard." Owen continued gazing upward. 4 more babies coming, need to be ready. We have time. Sarah isn't due for another month at least. He glanced at her then, his eyes reflecting moonlight. "And you, when is your time?" "Late November," the midwife thought. Rosalie placed a protective hand over her belly. "Though Martha's early arrival suggests we should be prepared sooner." Owen nodded. "All the more reason to finish the kitchen. Need a proper place for all these little ones." Rosalie studied his profile, noting the determined set of his jaw. "You've done more than anyone could expect, Owen, more than most men would. Most men haven't seen what I've seen." He turned to face her fully. "During the war, I watched men die because they didn't have shelter, medicine, basic comforts. Swore if I survived, I'd never stand by while others suffered if I could help." "Is that why you took us in? Because of an oath?" "At first, maybe." His voice softened. "Now it's different." Rosalie's heart quickened. "How so?" Instead of answering directly, Owen reached out slowly, giving her time to withdraw, and placed his hand beside hers on the porch railing, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of his skin. "Never thought I'd have a family," he said quietly. "After the war, figured that wasn't in the cards for me, too much damage." He glanced toward the house where the others slept. "But these past weeks, hearing laughter in the house, watching Hannah grow stronger each day. It's been like finding something I didn't know I'd lost." Rosalie understood completely. She'd felt the same awakening, the gradual realization that life continued even after devastating loss, that joy could return when you least expected it. "I know you're still mourning your husband," Owen continued carefully. "And I respect that. Just wanted you to know that you and the others, you're not just obligations to me. You're—" He trailed off, seemingly unable to find the right word. "Family," Rosalie supplied softly. Owen's eyes met hers, vulnerable and hopeful. "If you'd want that." It wasn't a declaration of love, not yet, but it was an opening, an acknowledgement of possibility. Rosalie felt both terrified and exhilarated by the prospect. "I think," she said slowly, "that family is what we make it. And what we've made here is something good." Owen's smile transformed his weathered face, erasing years of solitude in an instant. He didn't push further, didn't try to take her hand or move closer. Instead, they stood together in companionable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, each aware of a subtle but profound shift between them. Sarah's labor began exactly 1 month after Martha's, but progressed much differently. After 12 hours with little progress, Owen did ride for the doctor, pushing his horse to its limits. They returned to find Sarah weakening, her face gray with exhaustion. "Breech presentation," the doctor announced grimly after examination. "I'll need to turn the baby if there's any chance." What followed tested them all. Sarah's screams echoed through the house as the doctor worked. Elizabeth sobbed in the corner, Catherine prayed steadily, and Martha paced with Hannah in her arms. Rosalie assisted the doctor, passing instruments and wiping Sarah's brow while trying to ignore the implications for her own impending birth. Owen stationed himself outside the door, ready to help if called but giving the women privacy. When the doctor finally called for more hot water, Owen delivered it with steady hands despite his ashen face. "How is she?" he asked Rosalie in a low voice. "Fighting," Rosalie answered honestly. The baby too. Hours later, as dawn broke over the eastern hills, a thin, wavering cry announced the arrival of Sarah's son. The doctor emerged from the bedroom looking exhausted but satisfied. Mother and child alive, though it was close, he told Owen and Rosalie. She'll need careful watching for fever, and the boy is smaller than I'd like, but they're survivors, both of them. Sarah named her son William, after her late husband, with the middle name Owen in honor of the man who'd ridden through the night to bring help. When she placed the tiny infant in Owen's arms, his face reflected a wonder that brought tears to Rosalie's eyes. 2 down, 3 to go, he murmured, gently returning William to his mother. God willing, the rest come easier than this one. The doctor stayed 2 days to monitor Sarah's recovery, using the time to examine the other pregnant women as well. He pronounced Elizabeth and Catherine progressing normally, due in mid-October and early November respectively. When he examined Rosalie, however, his expression grew concerned. The baby's large, he told her privately, and your frame is small. We should prepare for a difficult delivery. Rosalie absorbed this news with outward calm, though inwardly she trembled. What should I do? Rest when you can, eat well but not excessively, and pray. He packed his instruments methodically. I'll try to return before your time, but with winter approaching and so many settlements scattered across the territory, I can't promise. After the doctor departed, Rosalie kept his warning to herself, not wanting to worry the others or add to Owen's already considerable burden. But that night, alone in her room, she allowed her fears full rein, weeping silently for Daniel, who should have been there, for the pain ahead, for the child who might grow up motherless. A soft knock interrupted her tears. Hastily wiping her face, she called, "Yes." The door opened slightly to reveal Owen, a cup of tea in his hand. "Thought you might need this," he said. "Noticed you didn't eat much at supper." Rosalie accepted the cup gratefully. "Thank you." Instead of leaving, Owen lingered in the doorway. "The doctor said something that troubled you." It wasn't a question. Rosalie considered denying it, then sighed. "He's concerned about the birth, says the baby is large." Owen's expression darkened. "I see." He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable yet unwilling to leave. "Is there anything that would help? Something I could get from town, perhaps?" His earnest desire to fix what couldn't be fixed touched Rosalie deeply. "Just what you're already doing," she assured him, "providing a safe place, keeping us all fed and sheltered." Owen nodded, but his troubled expression remained. "My mother died birthing my younger brother," he said abruptly. "I was 7. Remember hearing her cry out, then the terrible silence after." Rosalie set down her tea, heart aching for the boy he'd been. "I'm sorry, Owen, that must have been horrible for you." "My point is," he continued, meeting her gaze directly, "I won't let that happen again. Not if there's anything in my power to prevent it." The fierce protectiveness in his voice wrapped around Rosalie like a physical embrace. For the first time since the doctor's warning, she felt truly safe. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means more than I can say." Owen shifted again, seemingly about to say more, then thought better of it. "Try to rest," he said instead, moving to close the door. "Morning comes early." "Owen," Rosalie called softly, stopping him. The tea was a kind thought. He smiled, a brief flash in the dimness. "Good night, Rosalie." "Good night." After he left, Rosalie sipped her tea, finding it sweetened with honey just as she preferred. Such a small thing, yet it revealed how closely Owen had been observing her, learning her habits and preferences without her even noticing. The realization warmed her more than the tea itself. October brought Elizabeth's time. Unlike Sarah's prolonged ordeal, her labor progressed swiftly, almost too swiftly. Owen was away hunting when her water broke, leaving the women to manage alone. Rosalie took charge, drawing on her experience with the previous births while Martha tended to Hannah and Sarah cared for William. "It's happening too fast," Elizabeth gasped between contractions. "Something's wrong." "Nothing's wrong," Rosalie assured her, though privately she shared the concern. Some babies just come quickly. Catherine entered with fresh linens, her face set with determination. In the weeks since Hannah's birth, she had gradually emerged from her grief-stricken shell, taking an increasing role in household tasks. Now she moved with quiet efficiency, supporting Elizabeth as the younger woman bore down with each contraction. "You're doing wonderfully," she encouraged. Almost there. Elizabeth's daughter arrived barely 3 hours after labor began, announcing herself with lusty cries that brought tears of relief to everyone's eyes. They had just finished cleaning mother and child when they heard Owen's return. "In here," Rosalie called. "Come meet our newest arrival." Owen appeared in the doorway, a brace of rabbits in one hand, his expression shifting from concern to joy as he took in the scene. "Everyone all right?" Elizabeth nodded tiredly, cradling her daughter. "This is Rebecca, named for my mother." Owen set down the rabbits and approached cautiously. "She's beautiful," he said, genuine awe in his voice. "Perfect little fingers." "Would you like to hold her?" Elizabeth offered. Owen's eyes widened. "I don't know how." "Like this," Elizabeth demonstrated, then carefully transferred the swaddled infant to his arms. Rosalie watched as Owen gazed down at Rebecca, his expression softening in a way that made her heart flip strangely in her chest. There was something so right about the sight of him holding a baby, something that stirred feelings she'd been trying to ignore. "You're a natural," she observed. Owen glanced up, catching her gaze, and something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of shared joy, of growing connection. "Had good teachers," he replied, carefully returning Rebecca to Elizabeth. "You ladies have shown me a lot these past months." That evening, as they celebrated Rebecca's arrival with a special supper, Rosalie noticed Owen watching her with unusual intensity. When the others retired early, exhausted by the day's events, he lingered at the table, turning his coffee cup between his hands. "Something on your mind?" Rosalie asked, clearing the last plates. Owen set his cup down deliberately. "Been thinking about what happens after. After all the babies come. Winter will pass, spring will return." He met her eyes directly. "Will you stay, all of you?" The question caught Rosalie off guard. She'd been so focused on surviving pregnancy and birth that she'd given little thought to the future beyond it. "I don't know," she admitted. "We haven't discussed it." Owen nodded, accepting her answer. "Just wanted you to know you're welcome to for as long as you want." The implication hung in the air between them, not just welcome but wanted. Rosalie felt a flush rise to her cheeks. "That's generous of you," she said carefully, "not generosity." Owen stood, moving around the table until he stood before her. "Rosalie," a cry from Hannah interrupted whatever he had been about to say. Martha's voice called from the bedroom, "Could someone bring me a fresh diaper?" The moment broke. Owen stepped back, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "We should talk when there's time." "Yes," Rosalie agreed, both relieved and disappointed by the interruption, "when there's time." But time grew scarce as October waned. The addition was completed just as the first snow dusted the hills, providing comfortable accommodations for all 3 mothers and their babies. Owen turned his attention to winter preparations, smoking meat, storing vegetables in the root cellar, chopping endless cords of firewood. Catherine's time came next, on a bitter November night when wind howled around the eaves and snow piled against the doors. Her labor was neither as swift as Elizabeth's nor as difficult as Sarah's, proceeding with the same quiet determination that characterized Catherine herself. By dawn, she held twin boys in her arms, a surprise that left everyone marveling. She named them Thomas and James after her husband and father-in-law, tears flowing freely as she introduced them to their new family. "My other boys would have loved being big brothers," she said softly. "I wish they could have known these little ones." "They know," Owen said unexpectedly from the doorway where he'd been standing vigil throughout the night. "Wherever they are, they know." Catherine looked up at him gratefully. "I believe that too." As November deepened, Rosalie felt increasingly anxious about her impending birth. The doctor had not returned as hoped, likely prevented by early snowstorms that had already isolated them from Tucumcari. Her back ached constantly, her feet swelled despite regular rest, and the baby's movements grew so vigorous they sometimes took her breath away. Owen hovered nearby whenever possible, finding excuses to be in whatever room she occupied, quick to offer assistance before she could even ask. His concern would have been smothering if it weren't so evidently born of genuine care. One afternoon, as snow fell steadily outside, Rosalie sat by the fire knitting a blanket for her baby. The house was unusually quiet. Martha and Sarah had taken all 3 babies to the large bedroom for their naps, while Elizabeth helped Catherine with laundry. Owen entered from outside, stamping snow from his boots. His cheeks were red with cold, his breath visible in the chilly air that followed him inside. "Storm's picking up," he reported, hanging his coat by the door. "Might be snowed in for a few days." "We have plenty of supplies," Rosalie assured him, setting aside her knitting with difficulty. Her belly had grown so large that even simple movements had become challenging. Owen crossed to her side, offering his hand. "Let me help." Rosalie accepted gratefully, allowing him to pull her to her feet. As she straightened, a sharp pain lanced through her abdomen, causing her to gasp and clutch his arm. "What is it?" Owen asked, alarm sharpening his voice. "Is it time?" Rosalie shook her head as the pain subsided. "Just a twinge. The doctor said these false pains are common near the end." Owen didn't look convinced. "Should I get Martha or Sarah?" "No need to worry them." Rosalie patted his arm reassuringly. "I'm fine, truly." Before he could respond, another pain struck, this one stronger than the first. Rosalie couldn't suppress a cry as she doubled over, clutching her belly. "That's no false pain," Owen declared, supporting her weight easily. "Martha," he bellowed toward the bedrooms. "Sarah, come quick." The next hours passed in a blur of pain for Rosalie. Her labor progressed rapidly at first, then stalled agonizingly as the baby seemed unwilling or unable to descend further. The other women took turns attending her while Owen paced the main room, occasionally stopping to press his ear against the bedroom door before resuming his anxious circuit. As evening turned to night and then to dawn with no progress, Rosalie began to fear the doctor's warning had been all too accurate. Her strength was failing, each contraction bringing less effective pushing as exhaustion overwhelmed her. "I can't," she sobbed after a particularly brutal contraction. "I can't do this anymore." Martha wiped Rosalie's forehead with a cool cloth. "Yes, you can. You're the strongest of all of us, always have been." "The baby's stuck," Rosalie whispered. "It's too big." Sarah and Martha exchanged worried glances. "We might need to try something else," Sarah said carefully. "Catherine, go ask Owen if he has any whiskey." Catherine returned moments later, Owen close behind her. "I heard," he said, his face haggard with concern. "What can I do?" Martha stood, decisiveness in every line of her body. "We need to change her position. Help us move her." Under Martha's direction, Owen helped lift Rosalie to a squatting position, supporting her weight while the women arranged blankets and pillows beneath her. "This might help the baby move down," Martha explained, positioning herself to catch the infant. "Gravity working with us instead of against us." Rosalie was beyond caring about modesty or propriety. She leaned back against Owen's chest, drawing strength from his solid presence as another contraction built. "Push when you're ready," Sarah encouraged. "We're all here with you." Rosalie bore down with renewed determination, feeling a different pressure in this position. Owen murmured encouragement in her ear, one arm around her shoulders while the other supported her under her knees. "That's it," Martha exclaimed. "I can see the head, one more push." With a final, desperate effort, Rosalie pushed as hard as she could. There was a moment of searing pain, then blessed relief as her baby slid into Martha's waiting hands. For one terrible moment, there was silence. Then a robust cry filled the room, the most beautiful sound Rosalie had ever heard. "A boy," Martha announced, tears streaming down her face. "A perfect, healthy boy." Rosalie collapsed back against Owen, too exhausted to even reach for her child. He held her securely, his own breath coming in shaky gasps that suggested he might be fighting tears. "You did it," he whispered against her hair. "I knew you would." After cleaning the baby, Martha placed him in Rosalie's arms. He was indeed large, with a shock of dark hair and a determined expression even in his first hours of life. "Daniel," Rosalie murmured, stroking his cheek with one finger. "For his father." Owen helped settle her back in bed, his movements gentle despite his obvious exhaustion. As the women busied themselves cleaning up, he lingered by Rosalie's side, gazing down at mother and child with naked emotion. "Thank you," Rosalie said softly, "for everything." Owen shook his head. "You did all the work. Not just for today, for all of it taking us in, building this place for us becoming." She hesitated, then continued, "Becoming family." Owen's eyes, red-rimmed from the long night, met her steadily. "The honor's been mine," he said simply. Then, with visible reluctance, he added, "You should rest now, we'll talk later." But later proved elusive as winter settled over the ranch in earnest. With 5 infants now demanding constant attention, the days blurred together in a cycle of feeding, changing, washing, and brief snatches of sleep. Owen continued to sleep in the barn despite the bitter cold, insisting the house was too crowded and he needed to be near the livestock anyway. Rosalie saw him primarily at mealtimes, when he would enter stamping snow from his boots, help serve the food, then retire to his corner of the table to eat quickly before returning to his endless outdoor tasks. He always asked about little Daniel, sometimes holding him briefly with a tenderness that made Rosalie's heart ache, but the intimate connection they'd shared during her labor seemed to have receded behind a wall of practical necessity. Christmas approached, bringing a rare break in the snow and with it, an unexpected visitor. Owen returned from checking his trap lines one afternoon with a stranger in tow, the doctor from Tucumcari, looking half frozen despite his heavy buffalo coat. "Found him struggling through the North Pass," Owen explained, helping the older man remove his snow-crusted outerwear. "Horse went lame about 3 miles out. Decided to make my promised visit before the next storm," the doctor explained, gratefully accepting the coffee Sarah hastened to pour. "Though it seems I'm too late for the birthing part." He examined all 5 babies and their mothers over the next day, pronouncing everyone remarkably healthy given the circumstances. "You've done well here," he told Owen privately as they shared a pipe on the porch that evening. "Better than most proper towns manage with new mothers and infants." Owen shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "The women did the hard part, perhaps, but they couldn't have done it without this place." The doctor tamped his pipe thoughtfully. "What happens now?" "Will you take them to Tucumcari come spring?" The question echoed Owen's own from months before, a question that remained unanswered. "If that's what they want," he said carefully, "it's their choice." The doctor studied him shrewdly. "And what do you want, Thornton?" Owen stared out at the snow-covered valley, considering his answer. "Want them to stay," he admitted finally. "All of them, especially." He trailed off, unwilling to voice the deepest wish of his heart. "The Reed woman," the doctor finished for him, "thought as much from the way you look at her." He puffed his pipe thoughtfully. "She's still in mourning." "I know that," Owen said sharply. "I'd never presume." "Calm down, man. I'm not accusing you of impropriety." The doctor tapped his pipe against the porch rail. "Just noting that grief has its own timeline, can't be rushed." Owen nodded, chastened. "I understand that better than most. I believe you do." The doctor rose, preparing to go inside. "For what it's worth, I've seen how she looks at you too when she thinks no one's watching." With that enigmatic statement, he left Owen alone with his thoughts and the vast, star-filled sky above. The doctor departed 2 days later, leading Owen's spare horse packed with supplies for the women and babies' clothing, special foods, medicines, and small luxuries that brought tears to the women's eyes. "Community in Tucumcari sends these with their compliments," he explained. "Word of your situation has spread. Expect more visitors come spring thaw." After he left, the women gathered in the main room to examine the gifts more closely. Among them was a small packet addressed specifically to Rosalie. Inside, she found a silver locket containing a tiny portrait of Daniel, obviously copied from the daguerreotype she'd salvaged from Stillwater. How did they? She wondered aloud, tears filling her eyes. I sent it, Owen admitted from the doorway. When Martha's husband asked me to be Hannah's godfather, I realized none of you had anything to remember your husbands by. Found an artist in Santa Fe willing to make miniatures from the photographs you saved. He crossed to the table where similar packets awaited the other women. Meant them for Christmas, but since the doctor was here. Elizabeth was the first to reach him, throwing her arms around his neck in an impulsive hug. Thank you, she sobbed. It's the most perfect gift. One by one, the others embraced him as well, overcome with gratitude. Only Rosalie held back, too moved to trust her voice or her emotions. Later, after the others had retired, she found Owen in the barn checking on the doctor's lame horse. He looked up at her approach, his expression unreadable in the lantern light. I didn't thank you properly, she said, the locket cool against her skin where she wore it. For the portrait. Owen straightened from examining the horse's hoof. Wasn't looking for thanks. I know. Rosalie stepped closer. That's why it means so much. You understand what we've lost because you've lost too, he nodded once sharply. Everyone has their ghosts. Yes, but not everyone honors others' ghosts the way you do. She reached out tentatively, touching his arm. You've given us all so much, Owen. Not just shelter and food, but dignity in our grief, space to heal. Owen's gaze dropped to her hand on his sleeve. It's been a privilege, he said quietly. Having you all here, it's brought life back to this place, to me. The vulnerability in his voice gave Rosalie courage. The doctor asked what happens in spring, didn't he? Owen looked up, surprised. How did you know? Because we've been asking ourselves the same question. She took a deep breath. The others want to stay if you'll have us. Martha says there's good clay by the creek for her pottery. Sarah wants to start a small school. Elizabeth's already planning next year's garden, and Catherine thinks her orchard would do well on the south slope. And you? Owen asked, the question barely audible. What do you want, Rosalie? In that moment, looking into his hopeful, hesitant face, Rosalie recognized the truth that had been growing in her heart for months. Daniel would always be her first love, her son's father, a treasured memory. But Owen's steadfast, honorable Owen with his quiet strength and endless capacity for care had become something she hadn't thought possible, a second chance at happiness. I want to stay too, she said softly, with you if that's what you want. Owen's breath caught audibly. Are you certain? It's not too soon, Rosalie smiled, feeling lighter than she had in months. I'll always love Daniel, but he would want me to be happy to give our son a good life. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from him, and I think I could be very happy with you, Owen Thornton. For a moment, Owen remained perfectly still, as though afraid any movement might shatter this fragile moment. Then, with infinite gentleness, he reached out to cup her face in his calloused hand. Rosalie Reed, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I've loved you since I watched you stand guard over your friends with nothing but a kitchen knife and more courage than any soldier I ever knew. Rosalie turned her face into his palm, pressing a kiss to the work-roughened skin. Then it's settled, we stay, all of us, build something lasting together. A haven, Owen murmured, drawing her carefully into his arms, for all of us. As spring transformed the valley into a carpet of wildflowers, the ranch took on a new identity. No longer just Owen's solitary homestead, it became a true community, a haven built on shared loss and newfound hope. The women, no longer defined solely by their widowhood or motherhood, discovered new purposes. Martha's pottery, fired in the kiln Owen helped her build, began selling in Tucumcari. Sarah opened a small school that attracted children from neighboring ranches. Elizabeth's garden expanded to include medicinal herbs she learned to prepare from a traveling pharmacist. Catherine's first apple saplings took root on the south slope, promising future harvests. Owen legally registered the land claim under all their names collectively, an unprecedented arrangement that raised eyebrows at the territorial office, but was eventually approved. "This place belongs to all of us now," he explained. "What we build together." On a perfect June morning, with wildflowers decorating every surface and 5 babies watching from their mother's arms, Owen and Rosalie exchanged vows beneath the cottonwood tree by the creek. The ceremony was simple but profound, acknowledging both the loves they had lost and the new bond they were forming. "I take you not to replace what was, but to build what can be," Rosalie promised, her voice clear and sure as little Daniel gurgled in Martha's arms. "I take you as partner, companion, and wife," Owen responded, his usually steady hands trembling slightly as he placed a simple gold band on her finger. "From this day forward, through whatever life brings." The celebration afterward drew people from miles around, curious neighbors, traders, the doctor from Tucumcari, even a photographer who captured their unusual family on his glass plates. 5 women, 6 children including Daniel, and Owen standing proudly in their midst. "What should we call this place?" the photographer asked as he prepared the shot. "For the record." The women exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them before Rosalie spoke. "Haven," she said simply. "The Haven Ranch." Owen's arm tightened around her waist, his approval evident in the gentle squeeze. As the photographer ducked beneath his black cloth, Rosalie leaned into her new husband's embrace, marveling at the journey that had brought them to this moment, from devastating loss to unexpected joy, from strangers thrown together by tragedy to a family bound by choice and love. That night, after the guests had departed and the children were asleep, Owen and Rosalie stood on the porch of their expanded home, gazing out at the peaceful valley bathed in moonlight. "Did you ever imagine this?" Rosalie asked, nestled against his side. "When you found us that day?" Owen shook his head. "Never, was just trying to do the right thing." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Got more than I deserved in return." "We all did," Rosalie agreed. "A second chance, a new beginning." As if to emphasize her words, a cry rose from inside the house, little Daniel waking for his nighttime feeding. Rosalie turned to go to him, but Owen caught her hand, pulling her back for one more kiss. "Thank you," he whispered against her lips, "for making this place a home." Rosalie smiled up at him, her heart full beyond measure. "Thank you for making it a haven." Hand in hand, they went inside to tend their son, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together, not just the two of them, but the entire unlikely family they had built from the ashes of tragedy, a testament to the resilience of the human heart and its endless capacity for love. Years later, travelers passing through the New Mexico territory would speak of the unusual ranch east of Tucumcari, a prosperous place run by a consortium of women and one former soldier, where orphans found homes, travelers found welcome, and wounded souls found healing. They called it many things: the Women's Ranch, Thornton's Folly, the Baby Farm, but to those who lived there, it remained simply Haven, a dream built by necessity, sustained by courage, and transformed by love into something remarkable and enduring.